Some of you may or may not know that my background, my personal background, is Buddhism. And it took a little bit to reconcile myself to walk through those doors without it being a funeral or a wedding. You know, that's the only time I went to church. But anyway, 33 years ago, which, yeah, you start adding it up. Yeah, okay.
You're not that old.
Well, when I was 20, I was lost. And even as far back as I could go, I just had a hard time buying the Christianity as it was explained to me. And as I got to be 16, I had a cousin, Kim. I adored my cousin Kim. She was 9 months younger than I, and she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, 15 years old. And I prayed and prayed and prayed that she could live. You know, I was willing to trade places with her because I believed that she had so much more to offer the world than I. And as much as I prayed, she continued to suffer. And each time I felt God didn't, couldn't, or wouldn't hear my prayers. So I felt he had turned his back on me, so I turned my back on him. Because, you know, they were telling me, well, it's God's will that she has brain tumor. What could anyone 15-year-old do for God to say, you know what, I'm going to smite you, you have a brain tumor? I just couldn't buy it. She was beautiful, she was vivacious, she was intelligent, and, you know, okay, well, y'all say God's will, fine, but I'm going over this way. So she died at the age of 18. And even a few weeks before she actually died, and I was called back to Ohio to see her one more time, and I begged God to take her. Okay, all right, well, you made her, you know, you kept the cancer going, so please release her from her suffering. And she continued to live. So, you know, I was done. Me and God were done. We were on the outs, you know, y'all, okay, fine, whatever. I'm out. And fast forward 2 years, and my mother comes in, and she's telling me about this experience she had at a Buddhist gathering. And I was really intrigued, and she said, maybe this is what you're looking for. And she was so right. So at the first meeting, you know, I found a room full of black, Japanese, and white folks kneeling on the floor. And they were facing this wooden box. And it had a scroll of paper in it. And they were all chanting, you know, incense was going, and the candles were lit, and I'm hearing, Nam yo ho denge kyo, nam yo ho denge kyo, and the whole house is vibrating. It's like, I don't know if I should run or stay, but this really is cool. You know? So, you know what? I never looked back. And at that time, to say I had low self-esteem was really an understatement, because I felt so ugly. I felt so unlovable. And I even felt to a degree that, you know, my parents loved me because they had to. But after joining this lay organization and starting to change, my entire perspective changed. And it's not like I looked in the mirror and poof, all of a sudden I was Beyonce. But what I saw was my viewpoint changed. I was able to see my own inner nature and my light. And you know what? When you look at the light of Creator, it is all beautiful. So I start to get a little glimmer of what was inside me. So that's what brought me to Buddhism in the first place. So what I want to do is give you a real quick history of where Buddhism comes from. And it starts with Shakyamuni Buddha, which is, if you read any Buddhist text, everything started with Shakyamuni. And he was a prince named Siddhartha. And he lived in a golden castle with, you know, servants and huge walls all around the palace. And he wondered, what is on the other side? So one day he snuck out. And when he snuck out, he looked. And what he found was all the suffering of the world. And when he saw the suffering, he decided that he had to abandon his sheltered princely life. And he decided that instead he wanted to understand the inescapable great sufferings of every human being. Those four great sufferings is birth, aging, sickness, and death. And not only did he want to understand it, he wanted to find a way to overcome it. Now, the term Buddha means enlightened one. And it applies to any human being who realizes the eternality of life and the operation of cause and effect through the three existences of past, present, and future. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha wrote many books. They're called sutras. His last one is called the Lotus Sutra. And many believe that the Lotus Sutra was his greatest teaching. And it teaches that the existence of any innate and universal truth, known as the Buddha nature, is the manifestation of absolute happiness. And the second part of that is the reality. It affirms the reality of daily life. It confirms the act of wholehearted compassion, and it encourages the interaction with everybody and the whole planet. And the Lotus Sutra is also unique among the teachings of Shakyamuni because it makes the attainment of enlightenment a possibility for everyone. Now, we were talking 2,500 years ago. You had to be male and rich to reach enlightenment. So this was really a profound that even with the caste system and all of that everybody had the potential to become a Buddha. Now understand, Shakyamuni came around in what's now Nepal. So Buddhism went from India into China, into Korea, into Japan, and then further on, and eventually to the United States. So 700 years ago, there was a Buddhist monk named Nichiren Daishonin, and he studied all the different writings of Shakyamuni, and he realized that contained in the Lotus Sutra was the universal law of life. And he took 2 chapters out of the Lotus Sutra and decided this is where the meat